perils, terminal diseases, fatal accidents, near-death experiences. All of this give us a stark reminder of our mortality. Events like this heighten our awareness of the brevity of life and awakens us to the fact that sooner or later we will all be approaching our own death. There is no escaping. There is no reprieve. There are no exemptions. It is inevitable. Death will come to every person in the world. That life is short is something that is already obvious to many people. I think what is of a greater concern is the lack of proper inferences, I should say, or implications that people should be drawing from the fact that life is short. The more common things that we hear when it comes to drawing any kind of conclusion from the fact that life is short would include things like, life is short, therefore be happy. Life is short, therefore you should take risks. Life is short, therefore you should follow your inner self. Life is short, stop worrying. Life is short, focus on what makes you happy. There is an awareness that death may be approaching, but it seems to me that many of us are drawing the wrong conclusion from it. What we will see in Psalm 39 is quite the opposite. You will find an individual who is probably towards the end of his life or nearing his death and beginning to reflect on the transitory nature of life. He's going to realize that life is short and make and draw inferences or conclusion from that realization. Likewise, as we look at this passage, I would like for us not only to realize that life is momentary, that we're not going to live for long. Some may be longer, but some of us would experience that younger. But we all need to respond, though, to the realization that life is indeed short. And we do so by how we live our life. As we shall see here, though, that knowing that life is short and trying to live that short life with meaning and purpose, all of that would have to be tied or connected to the one who was actually given us that life. I think the modern misconception, I would suggest, is the idea that life is to be lived for its own sake. So that life is really about fulfilling what you desire in life. Life is really about making the most of it by, doing whatever it is that you can do, or that's just, expressing yourself and just enjoying whatever the world can offer you. That, I think, is a short-sighted, myopic view of life. What you will see here instead is a long view to life. He may be nearing death, but he realizes that life, if it is to be enjoyed, and if it is to make sense at all, it would have to be connected to God. Psalm 39 is quite elusive in terms of what the background is all about, but we can discern right away in the passage that this is a very personal psalm. In fact, as you read through it, you kind of wonder what's really the point of this passage. I can't seem to identify with what the author is telling me here. So we know from the heading that it must have been written by David according to tradition, and it was written for a guy named Jeduthun, or however you may want to pronounce that. But we have no idea who this individual is. He must have served in the temple, must be a guy in charge with the music. But there is no other information available in terms of who this fellow is. But if you take the psalm itself on its own, you would realize that it is a form of lament. It is a sad reflection of the brevity of life. It's a mixture. There's a sad reflection sort of the modern emo or reflection to, to what's going on in his life. But at the same time, it ends with a prayer. He expresses his hope in God. He doesn't deny what's going on in his life, and in fact, you can feel the pain and the restraint in terms of not wanting to voice out his complaints at all. But at the same time, he affirms that if there's anything that would make life worthwhile in this world, he says, it is God. My hope is in God, as he says in this verse. So this is a very personal psalm, very intimate indeed. There are some autobiographical details that you can pick up as you read through it. But there are several things that seems to provide a sort of a context for us as we reconstruct what's behind the text. We know that the guy is probably sick or experiencing some kind of a terminal disease. He's dying, let's put it that way. Or perhaps he's not sick, he's just very old. So, in both cases, he is nearing the end of his life. But we also know that he seems to think that his death is just, it's right around the corner. It's about to happen soon. So maybe the modern equivalent of this is somebody, maybe your great-grandfather or great-grandmother coming to you saying, I'm about to die and this is what I want you to learn about life. Or somebody who's been told that your cancer would only allow you to survive for the next 2-3 months. And these are the kinds of things that you will probably want to express to your family members or to your children at that. So it's something similar to that. So he's nearing his death. So the first 3 verses gives us his state of mind, what he's actually thinking about what's going on. And then he gives us this reflection on the momentary or temporary nature of life. And then there's the prayer that we find beginning in verse 7. I don't know how often do you actually sit down, look at the ceiling or look at the horizon and wonder about what life is all about. Or maybe we're just so busy and so caught up with so many things in life that we probably hardly had any time to reflect on that. But I know of certain occasions in our life where we are actually forced to reflect on the shortness or the brevity of life. It's kind of like when you're driving, or whether you're riding a motorcycle or driving a car, and you're kind of sleepy. Have you had that experience? That's usually after you had coffee or too much coffee. You're sleepy, and then suddenly, the guy in front of you stops and you slam on the brake, and soon after that, I'm sure you will be fully awake. Right? Have you had an experience? Then you just suddenly, and you're like, oh, praise the Lord, I almost bumped into that guy, or run over that motorcycle or something like that. And then you're fully awake because now you're forced to reflect on what just took place and the possibility that things could have been a lot worse than they are. Or maybe for you, somebody gets sick in the family, or something really, some problem that is so big, that made you feel despairing and all that, and it makes you wonder, what is life all about? And this is similar to what this person is going through. As we read through, we're beginning with verse 1. He said, I will watch my ways and keep my tongue from sin. I will put a muzzle on my mouth while in the presence of the wicked. We're not exactly told why he is trying to restrain himself from speaking out. He tells us that he doesn't want to voice out any kind of negative words, perhaps in this case, perhaps directed towards God, especially in the presence of unbelievers or people who do not share the same faith as him. In verse 2 he says, I remain utterly silent, not even saying anything good, but my anguish increased. So this is not the case of trying to bottle up his feelings, but this is a case of really intentionally trying to keep himself from further complicating his situation. Or perhaps falsely accusing God, or perhaps falsely assigning blame on God, or whatever it is. He says, I don't want to speak about this, but in the process of doing so, my anguish increased. I don't know what how it is sometimes, because we are brought up with the idea that we should not be expressing ourselves to God, or that sometimes it is inappropriate to pour out our feelings to God. And we get to that in that situation when we are faced with those big problems, or we are in the middle of a trouble, and we can't seem to express our feelings to them because we're afraid that maybe God will not understand, or maybe some words may not be appropriate before God. Maybe it is in that sense that this fellow is trying to say, my situation is not really good, and I don't like what's happening right now, but I don't want to say it. And then in verse 2 it says that my anguish increased. The more that he's trying to keep himself from expressing what's truly going on, the more that it became very, very emotionally difficult or heavy upon him. And then verse 3 it says, my heart grew hot within me. It has become, the equivalent of this is that my heart has become uncontrollable. I'm going to say it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to express it to God because I can't stand it anymore. And that is why the following line says, while I meditated, the fire burned, and then I spoke with my tongue. So it's not that he was quick to complain before God, but it seems that he tried to hold it off as long as he can, not to really make a big issue out of this, but eventually he said, I'm just going to tell God and express to him what I think or what's going on. In a way, he's trying to prevent himself from speaking in anger and in haste, but eventually he said, I would have to tell God. When you look at the other Psalms, we know that sometimes they use language that we probably would say, oh, that doesn't sound appropriate at all. Or that, why would you say that to God, or something like that. But that seems to be okay. Of course, their language may also be limited in many ways, but it is not wrong at all to express to God whatever it is that you are feeling. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. So, this fellow is suffering, apparently. It could be that suffering is some kind of a punishment on him for something that he has done. We don't know that for sure. But because of what's going on in his life, it prompted him to look at life itself and to reflect on what it means to see life as short. Many of us, when we were young, we drive like we could live, or we would live forever. We go on adventures as if we have 7 lives, right? We would jump off a cliff, we would follow after another fellow doing dangerous stunts, whether, getting yourself drunk, or whether, doing illegal things and things like that, because you're thinking that maybe there is another chance tomorrow, that maybe, there is another life waiting for me. Well, when we are young, irresponsible, immature, we tend to see life as if it's going to roll over, like your load on a cell phone. If you don't use it up, the following months you're going to have more. But when you get older, it's different, right? I'm only 46. I'm already counting the number of productive years left of me. And sometimes I would read articles that says you need to have this X amount of money by the time you retire. And I was like, yeah, fat chance. But as you get older, as you get mature, I hope that you begin to become more intentional in counting the remaining amount of years that is left for you or in your life. So this man, nearing his death, would cry out to God. And partly it sounds like a prayer, but it's really a personal reflection. It's a meditation on what's going on. So he calls on God. He says, show me, Lord, my life's end and the number of my days. God, would you please show me the books Would you please tell me the X number of days that is remaining on my account? God, would you please show me the amount of time left for me on this earth? Let me know how fleeting my life is. How I wish God would text back and says, oh, by the way, you got 3 more months to live or 6 more months to live, but since you've been drinking too much Mountain Dew, just 5 more years, I wish such is the case. Don't you think we would be more, with that kind of information, you think life would be a lot more easier, or that we'll be more responsible? Or maybe not. Well, He's not really demanding, God, for some kind of an exact number of years that through some kind of a supernatural revelation, a writing on the wall that would say, in your case, you got 9 more years to live. That would have been cool. Wouldn't it be nice that if we were born with a shelf life, like expires on, that would be really cool. Then we'll just check each other's expiration date before we marry them. But we don't. But the whole exercise of asking God to tell me the remaining, or the number of days available, or the number of days there is left for me, is to say, God, life is indeed short. I'm about to expire. I'm nearing the end of the line. God, I recognize that there's very little time left for me. Some of you who have had, or who know of people or family members who have had cancer, and you've heard of people being told that you only live this number of years. But when it becomes your family, your own mom, for example, or your own daughter, or somebody very close to you, it's just surreal. To be told, for example, that based on our prognosis of the state of the cancer cells and how aggressive the multiplication of the cells and all that, we are projecting. They don't just use the term projecting. They would just say, we want for you to enjoy a good quality of life. That means you're dying. But it's just a more nice and diplomatic way to say that there is no cure. But once they start setting dates, oh man. I distinctly remember that when we were told that our mom, this was about 10 years ago, that she only has 6 months more to live. None of us said anything. But the doctor, the oncologist, was young, just graduated from abroad, and very straightforward. She's not Filipino. I mean, she's Filipino, but the way she's doing things is not very Filipino. Unlike, Filipinos would say, look at that now. She's got, she just said, well, to be frank with you, based on the test, you would still enjoy having her for the next 6 months or so, with a 50% chance of her surviving 6 months. And for you and for people you probably know, that seems to be a turning point right there. That's when we begin to see things at a different light, right? I know people who had family members who had cancer, and they would have this bucket list. They know that there is no cure, so they have this bucket list, and they would travel abroad or enjoy life, or just do all kinds of things to their family member, just so he would live a full life and enjoy what remaining time he or she has. So this man says to God, God, I know there's nothing much left with me or for me. In verse 5 he says, you made my days a mere handbreadth. Handbreadth is actually in ancient, among the ancient Jews, it's a form of measurement using your hands. In Tagalog, it's probably equivalent to what we call a dangkal, but in ancient Judaism, or among the ancient Jews, it's the 4 fingers. So he's saying that my life is just like the four fingers, which is the shortest of all measurement for distance or length during that particular time. So he's saying that my life is really short. It's the span of years is nothing before you, says, everything but a breath, even those who secure them. So it's not only literally short, but he also uses another figure of speech. He says, life is like a breath. James chapter 4 says, life is like a mist or a vapor. Because it's there and then it's gone. In other words, it's really, really, really short. And then verse 6 it says, surely everyone goes around like a mere phantom. I like that. There's many of them on November 1, or last night. But simply says that it's almost insignificant. It's momentary, it's here, and then it's gone. In vain they rush about, heaping up wealth without knowing whose it will finally be. There's an important point being made here. Because it's saying that for many people, when they realize that life is short, they begin to look at what they do in life as something that would give meaning to their life, or something that would become the basis for making meaning or making sense of what's going on in their life. And they see life itself as it is to be lived for life itself. It doesn't make sense. That's why he says here, life is short, people know that they will die eventually, but what do instead? They go over and devote their life, their energy in order to make more money, so they would live a comfortable life, so they would enjoy life, so they will be praised by people, and all kinds of things that becomes part of life. And because we do it so often, and we are made to believe that that's what life is all about, we start to think that that's what life is all about. And then you have pandemics. And then you realize that it doesn't matter how healthy you are or how wealthy or poor you are, it doesn't matter. You get COVID, you get the chance of perhaps even dying. And then a typhoon like Rolly comes along, right? And then we wonder what's there to life. If everything that we work for and everything that we try to accumulate in this world can easily disappear, even our own health can easily be taken away from us, then maybe the meaning and the sense and purpose of life is not to be found in life itself. Verse 7. So he says, but now, Lord, what do I look for? My hope is in you. I'm dying. There's very little time left for me. But God, help me to at least enjoy whatever is left with me. Let me read through these next few verses because I want to get to the last verse. Save me from all my transgression. And it's like saying, God, I know I've done wrong, but please just finish off the punishment or whatever it is, penalty that I have to face. Do not make me the scorn of fools. Do not embarrass me in front of the wicked. I was silent. I will not open my mouth, for you are the one who has done this. Remove your scourge from me. I am overcome by the blow of your hand. When you rebuke and discipline anyone for their sin, you consume their wealth like a moth. This is perhaps an indication also that maybe his suffering has resulted in him being stripped of his wealth and property or whatever that may be. But again, he repeats the idea that surely everyone is but a breath. It says regardless, whether you become poor, successful, or wealthy, you're just passing through. Hear my prayer, he says. Lord, listen to my cry for help. Do not be deaf to my weeping. I will dwell with you as a foreigner or stranger, as all my ancestors were. Again, emphasizing the passing nature of life. And then in verse 13, this is really his heart's desire. I think sort of the main point of his prayer. Look away from me. In other words, God, please, would you put an end to my suffering, to the troubles that I am in? And it says, that I may enjoy life again before I depart and I'm no more. If there's one thing that is wishing God would do so that as a result he would enjoy whatever life or days, years that is left for him, is to say, God, put an end to my suffering from our troubles now. It is a worthy desire indeed. And I'm sure you probably you know somebody or met someone who's suffering, going through a terminal disease, and how the pain increases towards the very end, and they're just wishing for things to end. Things like that. It's probably in a similar vein that is asking God, this is just so much trouble, but I still want to enjoy life. I want to offer my life to you. I want you to become part of this life. Please put an end to this. As I have said, this is a very personal prayer, and sometimes it's very difficult to read through this and try to reflect any kind of a comparable situation, right? We might end up misreading things and incorporating our very own experience. So I would like to step back a little bit, and I would like for us to understand what it means for us actually to say that life is short. What are the implications for us? So what kinds of things do we need to learn from the fact that life is short? One, I think we need to live out our short life within an appropriate perspective. I think each one of us starts with a perspective, a general view of doing things. We begin, when we grow up and we get educated and we develop these desires, partly influenced by our parents, partly society, and we are told that this is what life is all about. This is about, finishing good, getting good education, getting a good paying job, buying your own car, buying your own house, raising a good family, finding a spouse, and all kinds of things that comes along with what we imagine to be the good life. So a lot of times that's what becomes the overarching narrative of our life. So when we look at our life, we want to see where we are at in this narrative. Oh, I'm still finishing school over here. Oh, later on, I'm going to pass the bar exam or the board exam, and then I'm going to get a job, and then make money, and then meet somebody special, raise a family, eventually travel the world, and then be old and die. Right? That's pretty much. That's how we map out our life, and that becomes our perspective in life. We want to align everything to that. But maybe we need to recalibrate that. Maybe we need to ask questions that are a lot bigger than that. Maybe what society is offering to us as a perspective may not in fact be coinciding or do not coincide with the biblical perspective of things. What we need to do when it comes to our short life is to have a long view. What I mean by that, we are to treat life as if it's not only limited to the here and now. There is death and there is afterwards. There is life here and then there is afterlife. So maybe we need to be thinking about how we can bring over some of the things that we do in life here to the afterlife. Or if there is such a connection at all. What we are made to believe is that this is all that there is to life. That's it. You eat, drink, be merry, and then you're dead. The Bible says there's a lot more. We need a long view, not something nearsighted, not something that is merely bound up to the here and now. Another thing that we see in this passage is that meaning and purpose is not to be found on the things that we fill our life with. There's always a mental list of some sort in each person's mind of what would make life happy, joyful, and satisfying. You got one in your head right now. I'm sure about that. And you know that you need to check off this and check off that and check off this, thinking that if everything is checked off, a good-looking spouse, wonderful children, a nice house, ability to travel abroad, capacity to enjoy the nicer things of life. So we devote our life and everything about life is made to appear as if it's all directed towards checking off those long lists. Well, it's not in the things that we fill our life with that we can find meaning and purpose in this short life. Another thing is that life and everything that comes with it will not continue forever. That's what it's saying here. Okay, let's just say you've checked off everything and you've arrived. You've gotten to the top. You've got everything at your disposal. And you're sitting pretty by the beach, drinking Mountain Dew. And as you drink more of that thing, that evil thing that it is, it's from my perspective, it's evil. But evil things are very tempting, aren't they? Then you get diabetes. Then you get COVID, since you're immunocompromised already. And you spend your days on a respirator, and eventually you die. I'm not sure that in the afterlife you will be bargaining with God and saying, God, why did you let me bring all the comfort that I have in that life to this life that I have? Life and everything with it. Life, as with everything else in the world, will pass away. Life, then, is too short to be wasted on the lesser important things in this life, or on the things of no lasting significance. If we are to find meaning and fulfillment to our short life, we are to discover God, His purpose for us. God, after all, is the giver of life. So our awareness of our mortality should prompt us to look to God's eternality. I love taking strolls in the cemetery or jogging to a cemetery because you tend to run faster than you're motivated. No, you don't want to, you get in the groove. You're thinking, man, somebody's probably trying to jog along with me. But really, the function of November 1 and November 2, for example, it's really for us to be prompted once again. That life is short. That life is temporal. That life is momentary. That life is transitory. That life is not here for good. But there is one to whom we can look up to. There is one to whom we can connect our life with. There is one for whom we should live our life with. And that one, that God, is eternal. As you know, a year ago, I had surgery. What I didn't tell you is that I was very scared, actually, when they put me in that operating table and they knocked me out. Especially when they told me that I was initially diagnosed with one, and then they operated on something else. So that's not the kind of surprises that you would want to hear from a doctor. Oh, you came in with we thought you were having problem with your gallbladder, and guess what? We got your appendix out. No, not the kind of, I don't know if that's good news or not, but it was for a time. But it made me realize, when you're in surgery and then they put anesthesia, and you start to get this euphoric feeling, and you don't know, but your mind is working. And I was thinking, man, what if I don't wake up? Or what if they cut something? I don't know. I mean, I'm no doctor, and I was like, man, I don't know. What if I die? And then you start thinking, what would happen to my kids? What would happen to my wife? What would happen to Prosper? Oh, they'll just find another pastor. But what would happen to my kids? Immediately, what would happen to my kids? And things like that. So it causes you to have a sharper focus on life. If that doesn't convince you, go ahead. Read through the statistics of the COVID-19 disease. 46 million cases around the world, 1.2 million deaths in 10 months' time. If that doesn't make you think about your own mortality, I don't know what will. But knowing that life is short, make us see things in a different light. And that realization, I pray and I hope for each one of us, would cause us to connect our life with God. And to really ask God, God, how much time do I have left in this world and what do you want me to do? Instead of saying, God, how much time do I have left in this world because I got everything planned out. This vacation of mine, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. I'm going to earn this degree. I still have to find my man, God, You got to give me time for that. Come on. But maybe the better question to say is, God, how much life or how many more years do I have in this world? And what do you want me to do with the remaining time that I have? That's how you reckon with your short life. Will you join me in prayer, please? Let's all stand up. And I would like to call on you, for those of us, especially those of us who are just very young, students and professionals. I'm sure you have your dreams and you have things planned out for your life, or probably your parents have things planned out for your life. I would like for you to be honest to God and say, God, I thank you for the life that you have given me, but I want you to become part of everything that I want to happen from here on. You have to make God part of your future, if not make Him your future. Because life apart from God is really nothing. It is God's involvement. It is God being the goal, God being the purpose, God being the source of meaning for our life that would make your short life worthwhile. Let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, we acknowledge the many times that we have become so confused about what this life is all about. Forgive us, God, for our youthful ignorance. Forgive us for our carelessness, our immaturity, our lack of perspective, God. Forgive us, Father, for just relying on our own desires and just depending on what other people are saying about what life should be all about. Father, today as we remember those who have died, relatives and family members, as we realize that death is something that we all have to face, a step that we will all have to take. And as we see that life is short, help us, God, from here on to say that we want to live, that I want to live my life for you, God. Make it real for each one of us this morning, God. Whether we're young, whether we're old, whether we have lived already X number of years, and those of us who are just starting in life. My prayer, Father, is that we would see early on that this short life would become insignificant and would mean nothing at all apart from you. I pray for my brothers and sisters here that we would truly look at life as a gift that is to be lived for the one who has given it to us. Our life is yours, God. Use it. Use it for your honor and glory.